When I turned 72, I started looking at myself in the mirror with a mix of nostalgia and resignation. My skin was no longer the same. The wrinkles had multiplied silently, as if each one held a story I had never asked to tell. My cheeks had lost their firmness, and what was once a face full of vitality now reflected fatigue and a passage of time I could not ignore. I was never someone obsessed with appearance, but I admit it hurt to see how my skin reminded me, every morning, that youth was behind me. One ordinary night, almost without thinking too much about it, I decided to try something different. It wasn't an expensive cream or a complicated treatment. It was just a simple oil someone had kindly recommended to me. I wasn't expecting miracles, but I thought, what do I have to lose? I applied it gently to my face, with a bit of skepticism and also a pinch of hope. The texture was pleasant, the scent relaxing. It was a small ritual before going to sleep, almost like a caress I gifted myself. The next morning, when I woke up, I felt something different. My skin wasn't the same as on other days. I don't know if it was the light, the sensation, or a real transformation. But the truth is, I noticed it was softer, smoother, less dull. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in a long while, I found myself smiling. It wasn't that the wrinkles had disappeared overnight, but there was a change, a freshness I hadn't felt in years. That moment reminded me that even at this age, I can still discover new things that give me back confidence and joy. I want to make something clear from the start. What I'm going to share is not advertising or magical promises. It isn't a miracle product, but a personal experience that transformed the way I see my skincare. Throughout this video, I'll tell you everything. The benefits I found, the mistakes I learned to avoid, the warnings you should keep in mind, and also the alternatives so each person can find what works best. This journey is not just about an oil. It's about the power of caring for yourself, of gifting yourself a moment each night, and discovering that it's never too late to feel good in front of the mirror. And now, I want to invite you to be part of this conversation. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, how many years old are you, and from which country are you watching us? I'll love to read you, because every story, every age, and every place adds to this community we're building together. The weight of wrinkles on self-esteem. As the years go by, one of the most difficult experiences is learning to live with the changes in our own face. Aging in front of the mirror isn't something that happens from one day to the next, but a slow process, almost invisible, until one day we pause and notice that the skin no longer has the same firmness, that the lines around the eyes and mouth have deepened, and that the reflection we see feels strange to us, as if it belonged to someone else. What's curious is that wrinkles are not just marks on the skin. They're symbols that society tends to interpret in very different ways. In many cases, wrinkles are seen as a loss, as the constant reminder that youth has passed and that we've left behind a stage everyone seems to value above all others. Television, magazines, and even everyday conversations are full of messages that glorify the young and the perfect. That constant bombardment makes many of us look at our wrinkles with shame, instead of recognizing them for what they really are, signs of the life we've lived. I remember an occasion when a relative, without bad intentions, commented, "Your face looks so tired. You should sleep more." They didn't realize that I had slept perfectly well that week. What they noticed wasn't fatigue, but time reflected in my skin. Words like those, even if innocent, sink deep and awaken insecurities we sometimes prefer to keep quiet. There are more than a few moments when we avoid a photo, lower our gaze in a conversation, or wear excessive makeup just to feel a little safer. Insecurity doesn't always come from within. It often comes from external gazes and judgments. A passing comment, a comparison with someone younger, or even the ad for a miracle cream is enough to make us feel we're losing value with every new wrinkle that appears. And yet, inside us, we know that every line on the skin has a story. The smile repeated hundreds of times, the tears shed in hard moments, the worries for our children or grandchildren. Every wrinkle is a map of life, even if it's hard to accept when what we see reminds us of what we've lost. This is where natural oils begin to play an important role. It's not about erasing the history of our face or denying the passage of time, but about lovingly caring for the skin we have today. These oils offer more than an aesthetic benefit. They give us the chance to turn our daily routine into an act of self-kindness. Applying oil to the skin isn't just a beauty treatment. It's also a way of telling ourselves, I deserve this care, I deserve to feel good. That's why when we talk about aging and self-esteem, we're not referring only to what others see, but to what we feel when we look in the mirror. And in that small gesture of applying a few drops of oil before bed, may lie one of the simplest and most powerful tools to make peace with our image, and remember that we still have a right to beauty and confidence at any age. How I discovered this oil. My relationship with this oil began in an unexpected, almost casual way, as things that later change our lives often do. I didn't look for it at a pharmacy or see it advertised on television. It came to me through a simple conversation, one of those that seem unimportant, but then becomes a turning point. I remember it was a calm afternoon when I was visiting a childhood friend. We were reminiscing, sharing cups of tea and anecdotes that seemed to have dozed off in memory. Suddenly, I noticed something different about her. Her skin had a glow I didn't remember. It wasn't a fabricated youth, but a natural freshness, a softness that stood out. I dared to ask, half joking, what magic potion she was using. She smiled, and with the calm of someone who keeps a simple secret, answered, "Just an oil. I use it at night." At first, I thought she was exaggerating. I had always heard about natural oils, but in my mind, they were things of the past, home remedies that no longer had a place in a world full of modern cosmetics and costly formulas. I also remembered my grandmother using oils in her hair and on the skin of her hands, but I never imagined something so basic could have a visible effect on the face. As the days went by, that conversation kept circling in my head. I decided to read a bit more about it, and in an old book of natural remedies, I found mentions of those same oils that had been part of daily care in many cultures for centuries. From beauty rituals in Egypt to our grandmother's home recipes, it seemed there was an ancient wisdom we had let slip away. And although I was intrigued, the skepticism remained. I thought, if it were really that effective, wouldn't everyone already know? A few weeks later, on an ordinary day, I decided to set doubts aside. I bought a bottle of that oil, not as a big bet, but more as a personal experiment. I thought that in the worst case, nothing would happen. But if it worked, even a little, maybe I could recover some of the confidence I had lost in front of the mirror. The first night I had it in my hands, I remember the sensation perfectly. I opened the bottle, and a soft, almost herbal aroma wrapped around me, bringing calm. It wasn't a strong perfume, but a discreet scent, as if it came straight from nature. I poured a few drops onto my fingers and rubbed them lightly before bringing them to my face. The texture was unlike any cream I had tried. Light, silky, gliding easily over the skin. As I applied it, I was surprised by how quickly it absorbed, leaving a feeling of hydration without heaviness or greasiness. When I went to bed that night, with the faint perfume still on my skin, I thought I probably wouldn't notice anything different the next day. But deep down, a spark of hope had been lit. I wasn't expecting a miracle, just a gesture that would make me feel I was taking care of myself. And that first application marked the beginning of a small nightly ritual that over time would become something much deeper than a simple aesthetic treatment. A reminder that it's never too late to discover new ways to love ourselves. The first night and the first morning. That first night when I decided to apply the oil to my face, I did it calmly, as if stepping into new territory. I washed my face with warm water, making sure to remove every trace of dust or makeup. I wanted my skin to be clean, ready to receive what, until then, was only a promise. I took the bottle in my hands and opened it carefully. I placed a few drops on my fingertips and rubbed them gently to warm them a little. The aroma enveloped me immediately, a delicate, natural perfume that conveyed serenity. I brought my hands to my face and began spreading the oil with circular motions, from the center outward, as I'd read in a recommendation. The sensation was surprising. It wasn't heavy or greasy, as I had feared. Instead, I felt a light smoothness that spread easily. My skin, which often felt dry at the end of the day, absorbed the oil eagerly, as if it had been waiting for it for a long time. There was a subtle freshness, a sort of caress that relaxed my facial muscles and invited me to close my eyes. I paused for a few seconds in front of the mirror, watching how the oil's natural sheen highlighted my skin. It didn't seem like a sophisticated treatment, but a simple gesture. Yet in that instant, I felt something different, the sensation that I was giving myself a gift. I finished by massaging my forehead, cheekbones, and neck gently, and finally lay down in bed. As I turned off the light, the aroma was still with me, a silent reminder of what I had just done. The next morning was different from any other. I woke up without expecting anything, with my mind on everyday tasks, until I looked in the mirror. There was the surprise. My skin looked smoother, more rested. It wasn't a miraculous change or a radical transformation, but there was a clear difference. The finer lines around my eyes and mouth seemed softened, less marked. Overall, my face looked fresher, as if it had regained a bit of lost vitality. I ran my fingers gently over my cheek and noticed the texture. It was more supple, more hydrated. I no longer had that tight feeling that used to accompany me in the morning when my skin seemed to cry out for cream. In its place, there was a softness that surprised me and, above all, encouraged me. The emotion I felt was hard to describe. It wasn't just a physical change, but what it represented. After so long living with resignation in the face of wrinkles, that small result lit something in me, a spark of renewed hope. It showed me that there were still ways to care for my skin, to give myself attentions I hadn't considered. It wasn't vanity, it was self-esteem, the recognition that I still deserved to feel good when I looked in the mirror. That dawn marked the beginning of a new relationship with my personal care. I understood that I didn't need expensive products or unattainable promises. A few drops of oil, applied lovingly, were enough to remind me that my skin could still respond, that it was still alive, and that I could still feel at ease with myself. And that first morning, with a light heart, I told myself silently, maybe this is the beginning of something important. What this oil really does on the skin. After that first surprise in front of the mirror, I began to wonder what this oil was doing to my skin. I don't mean complicated formulas or technical explanations, but understanding, in simple words, why such a small gesture could produce such a visible effect. The first thing I noticed over the days was deep hydration. My skin no longer woke up dry or with that tightness that used to bother me in the mornings. The oil seemed to penetrate differently from the usual creams I'd used for years. With creams, I often felt a superficial layer, as if they sat on top of the skin without reaching deep. With the oil, however, the hydration lasted longer, as if the skin had absorbed it completely and kept it like a treasure. The second change was elasticity. With age, we all know the skin loses firmness, and I saw it every time I smiled or when my face was at rest. Little by little, I began to notice that my skin didn't crease as much. The wrinkles didn't disappear, because that would be an impossible miracle, but they did look less harsh, less deep. There was a softness in my face I hadn't perceived in a long time. It was as if the oil were helping my skin recover some of the flexibility it had lost. The third effect was nourishment. Although I couldn't see it with my eyes, I could feel it in the overall look of my face. My skin tone looked more even, with fewer dull patches. The texture had changed too. It was no longer rough, but more uniform. I began to understand that this oil wasn't erasing time, but feeding my skin steadily, like watering a plant and slowly watching it bloom. And I wasn't the only one to notice. Several people around me, without knowing what I was doing, began to comment. A neighbor told me one day, "You look more rested, as if you'd slept better." A granddaughter, with her childlike sincerity, asked if I had changed creams. Those small comments confirmed what I had already observed in the mirror. Of course, I must underline something important. This isn't a miracle. It's not that wrinkles vanish from one day to the next, or that the skin becomes that of a young girl. The real secret is consistency. Using it every night, without expecting immediate results, was what truly made the difference. Over time, the skin thanks you for that daily attention, and that's where the most significant changes show up. I'd say the great lesson I learned is that skin, even at 70 or at 80, still responds to care. No matter how many years go by, if we give it what it needs, it gives back signs of life and freshness. And that, more than an aesthetic treatment, is a reminder that it's never too late to take care of ourselves and feel good about who we are. How to apply it correctly. When I began using the oil every night, I realized that the way I applied it was as important as the oil itself. It wasn't enough to put on a few drops and wait for results. There was a small ritual, a nighttime routine that turned that moment into something almost therapeutic. Step by step of the nighttime routine. The first thing, always, was prior cleansing. The skin must be free of any makeup, dust, or sweat accumulated during the day. I simply use warm water and a gentle soap without strong fragrances, because the essential thing is to leave the skin fresh and ready to receive the oil. Once clean, I pat my face dry with a soft towel, without rubbing, just dabbing. Then I place 3 or 4 drops of oil in the palm of my hand. No more. That's the right amount to cover the face and neck without leaving excess. Next, I gently rub my palms to warm the oil. This small gesture helps it glide better and makes the skin receive it more comfortably. With warm hands, I begin applying it in circular motions, from the center outward. First on the cheeks, then on the forehead, moving down to the chin, and finally on the neck. Key areas. I focus especially on expression lines, around the eyes, at the corners of the lips, and on the forehead. Where time leaves deeper marks, I apply a slower massage with my fingertips. It's not about pressing hard, but giving a delicate massage that activates circulation and allows the oil to penetrate better. Another area I never forget is the neck and décolleté. Many times we care only for the face and neglect that very visible part, which also ages and reflects the passage of time. A few additional drops, applied with upward motions, are enough to keep that skin more nourished and firm. Additional recommendations. After applying the oil, I let a few minutes pass so it can absorb before lying down. During that time, I take the opportunity to read a little or simply relax. This prevents the oil from transferring immediately to the pillow. And speaking of pillows, something I've learned over the years is the importance of using clean pillowcases. The skin spends many hours in contact with them, and if they aren't fresh, they can reduce the effectiveness of nighttime care. Common mistakes to avoid. There are some mistakes I made at the beginning and that are worth mentioning. Using too much oil. Applying more won't bring better results. On the contrary, the skin can become saturated and feel heavy, not cleansing the skin first. If we apply oil to a face with impurities, all we do is seal them in. Forgetting the neck and décolleté. Care should be complete, not just on the face. Being impatient. Some people expect results in a few days and get disappointed. Real change comes with consistency. Over time, this routine stopped being just an aesthetic step and became a moment of self-care. It was a space of calm at the end of the day, a way of telling myself, you deserve this care. You deserve to feel good in your skin. Cumulative benefits over time. One of the most surprising things about this oil was seeing how the effects didn't stop at that first night. What began as a small change gradually became, week after week, a much deeper result. After 1 week. In the first few days, the difference in texture was already noticeable. My skin woke up softer, with less feeling of dryness. It wasn't a spectacular change, but enough to encourage me to continue. It was like a first sign that I was on the right path. After 1 month. After 4 weeks, the change was already evident. The finer lines seemed less marked. And what surprised me most was that my skin had a different glow, a more rested look. It was as if it had recovered a bit of vitality. I noticed it, but others did too. A friend asked me what I was using because I looked more radiant. Comments like that, even if small, reinforce motivation and confidence. After 3 months. The real impact arrived after about 3 months of constant use. That's when I understood the oil wasn't just another product, but an ally in my well-being. My skin was visibly more elastic, firmer. The deep wrinkles didn't disappear, but they did lose harshness, which made my expression look more relaxed. I even dared to smile in photos again without worrying so much about how the lines around my lips or eyes would crease. Renewed confidence. The greatest benefit wasn't only physical. What truly changed was my personal confidence. I began going out with less makeup, looking at myself in the mirror with less criticism and more affection. I no longer focused only on what I had lost with the years, but on what I could still recover with small habits. There were even very special moments. A grandchild telling me, "Grandma, you look pretty today," for no particular reason, or an acquaintance assuring me I looked rejuvenated. It may seem superficial, but at my age, those details fill the heart and remind us we still have a living presence, that we can feel good in our skin regardless of age. More than aesthetics, well-being. The most important thing I learned in this process is that it's not just about aesthetics. Yes, the skin improves and looks more cared for, but behind that lies something much more valuable: emotional well-being. The oil became a daily reminder that I still deserve attention and kindness toward myself. It wasn't simply a product, but a habit that strengthened both my skin and the way I saw and felt about myself. Uncomfortable truths. Not everything is perfect. When I talk about this oil and the changes it brought to my skin, I don't want anyone to be left with the idea that it's some kind of miracle in a bottle. That would be unfair and unrealistic. So I want to pause on what I call the uncomfortable truths. Those things that aren't always said, but are just as important as the benefits. Possible side effects. Although in my case the experience was positive, we have to admit that not all skin reacts the same way. Some people, especially those with very sensitive skin, may experience redness, itching, or small irritations. It's natural. What nourishes one skin may not suit another. That's why a fundamental recommendation is to test first on a small area, like behind the ear or on the inner wrist, before applying it to the entire face. That simple step can prevent unnecessary discomfort. Limitations. Another uncomfortable truth is that oil does not replace medical treatments. If someone has more complex skin issues, such as dermatitis, rosacea, or allergies, they should always consult a dermatologist before adding any new product. The oil is a support, not a magic solution. Also, although it adds elasticity and freshness, it doesn't erase decades in one night. Deep wrinkles are part of our history and our face. The oil can soften them, give a more rested look, but it won't make them disappear as if by magic. Cases where it's not recommended. It's not indicated for everyone either. People prone to acne, for example, should be cautious because certain oils can clog pores and worsen the situation. Likewise, those with open wounds, infections, or strong skin treatments should avoid it. And one more thing. Not all oils are the same. There are differences in purity, origin, and extraction methods. A low-quality oil can even be counterproductive. Honesty above all. The most honest thing is to recognize that this oil, like any product, is only one piece of personal care. There's no point applying it if we then neglect our diet, rest, or hydration. The skin reflects our entire lifestyle, not just what we put on it. In my experience, the oil was a valuable help, but the most important thing was combining it with more conscious habits, drinking more water, sleeping better, and reducing stress. Without that, the results would have been more limited. In conclusion, yes, this oil can improve the skin, give it vitality and softness, but it isn't everything. It doesn't replace comprehensive care or stop time. The true transformation comes when we accept our wrinkles as part of life and learn to care for ourselves with kindness and realism. Alternatives and combinations. Something I discovered over time is that there isn't a single oil that works for everyone. Just as each skin has its story, each oil has different properties. Exploring alternatives and combinations can make a big difference in results. Other oils with different benefits. Besides the oil I tried, there are several natural options that can bring specific improvements. Sweet almond oil, very gentle and nourishing, ideal for dry, delicate skin. It calms irritation and adds elasticity. Rosehip oil, famous for helping diminish scars and spots. It's lighter, perfect for those who can't stand very greasy textures. Argan oil, rich and dense, considered a great ally against loss of firmness. It leaves a silky finish. Coconut oil, very moisturizing, though not always recommended for oily skin, as it can clog pores. Each of these oils has its particularities, and choosing the right one depends greatly on personal needs and skin type. How to combine them in a care routine. An oil can be a great ally, but it shouldn't be the only step in your routine. The real difference is noticed when we integrate it into a set of habits. Sunscreen, essential every morning. There's no point caring for the skin at night if we then expose it to the sun without protection. Good nutrition. What we put on our plate is reflected on our face. Fruit, vegetables, nuts, and water are invisible allies of any oil. Internal and external hydration. Drinking enough water and applying light creams during the day complement the oil's nighttime nourishment. Exercise and rest. Active circulation and restorative sleep multiply the visible effects on the skin. An inspiring story. I remember the case of an acquaintance who, after hearing about my experience, decided to try rosehip oil first. At the beginning, she didn't notice big changes, but she combined it with a new habit, going out for a walk every evening. That mix of fresh air, movement, and consistent care transformed her skin and her mood as well. After a couple of months, she looked more radiant, not only because of the oil, but because she had found balance. That story taught me something important. There is no single miracle product. What truly makes the difference is consistency, the curiosity to try, and the smart combination of small habits. The power of the nightly ritual. Over time, I realized that applying oil each night wasn't just skincare, but a deep ritual of personal well-being. Beyond the product itself, what really made the difference was the habit. That little moment at the end of the day when I gifted myself a few minutes just for me. Beyond the oil. At a time in my life when everything seemed to run too fast, pausing for a few moments in front of the mirror became an act of resistance. It wasn't only about applying a few drops of oil, but about caressing my face gently, looking at myself with more kindness and less judgment. That pause reminded me I still had the right to care for myself, that it wasn't too late to feel good about who I am. Emotional connection. Every night, while massaging my skin in slow circles, I felt the day's tensions melting away. It was like closing a chapter of the day calmly. And I understood that personal care isn't vanity, it's self-esteem. It's that spark that tells us, I deserve this moment. With time, I noticed that routine turned into a small ritual of peace of mind. The silence, the room's soft light, the oil's aroma. Everything created an atmosphere that invited me to rest, not only my skin, but also my mind. A personal story. I remember that before starting this habit, I used to go to bed full of worries, the passage of time, the body's aches, the inevitable comparisons. I slept poorly and woke up tired. But something changed. The consistency of that nightly ritual taught my mind to associate it with relaxation. I'm not exaggerating when I say the quality of my sleep improved in a surprising way. After finishing the oil application, I went to bed calmer, with a fresh face, and the feeling that I had gifted myself an instant of sincere care. I slept more deeply, and upon waking, I not only saw my skin more rested, I also felt lighter emotionally. The real lesson. That is perhaps the greatest secret I discovered. The ritual is as powerful as the oil itself. It's not only what we apply to our skin, but the way we do it, the intention with which we treat ourselves. When we turn personal care into a moment of self-love, the results go far beyond the visible. In the end, I understood that aging isn't a battle against the mirror, but an opportunity to find new ways to love ourselves, each night, drop by drop. practical tips for those who want to try it. If after hearing about my experience you feel like trying an oil for your skincare, the first thing I want to say is, do it calmly and informed. A small, careful step can become a great ally in your routine. Where to get good quality oils? Natural oils can be found in pharmacies, herbal shops, health stores, and of course on many websites. However, not all are the same. The best thing is to look for places specializing in natural products, where turnover is high and quality is guaranteed. If you buy online, pay close attention to the seller's reputation and other customers' comments. Telling natural from processed. A common mistake is to think that any bottle labeled oil will do. The key is that it be pure, cold-pressed, and free of additives. These three words are your best guarantee. A cold-pressed oil better preserves its nutrients, while refined ones tend to lose much of their properties. Also, avoid those that include artificial fragrances, colorants, or preservatives. The natural doesn't need any of that. One simple way to identify it is to check the ingredient list. Ideally, it should have only one. For example, if you buy almond oil, the label should read only sweet almond oil. Nothing else. How to store them correctly. A quality oil also needs proper care at home. It's best to keep it in a dark bottle, away from direct light and heat. Many oils come in amber or blue glass containers precisely to protect them from oxidation. Also, make sure to close them well after use and avoid letting the dropper or cap come into contact with your fingers or with water to keep the product from becoming contaminated. Under proper conditions, a good oil can last several months without losing its properties. If you notice a change in smell or texture, it's better to stop using it. Recommendations for gradual testing. Every skin is unique, and what works for me may not work the same for you. So the wisest thing is to do a small test on a reduced area of skin before applying it to the whole face. The forearm is usually a good place. Apply a few drops, wait 24 hours, and see if there's any redness, itching, or reaction. If all goes well, start by applying a very small amount to your face, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, and gradually increase the frequency as you tolerate it. That way you allow your skin to get used to the new product without forcing it. The final tip, remember, oil is an ally, not a substitute for healthy habits. A balanced diet, adequate rest, and daily sun protection remain the fundamental pillars of healthy skin. The oil comes to enhance and add, but the real change happens when you integrate it as part of comprehensive care. What I learned at 72. Upon reaching 72 years of age, you learn many things. I learned that wrinkles are not an enemy, but the story written on our skin. I learned that time leaves marks, but it also leaves wisdom, memories, and moments no one can erase. And I understood that accepting myself as I am doesn't mean giving up. It means giving myself the right to keep caring for myself with love. For a long time I thought vanity was a luxury for the young. That at my age it made no sense to worry about my skin or how I looked in the mirror. But over time I discovered it wasn't vanity. It was respect for myself. Because caring for myself isn't trying to trick the years. It's giving myself the peace of feeling good in my own skin. Accepting age isn't easy. Every morning the mirror shows me a different face, with new lines, with less firmness. And yet I now understand that each wrinkle has a reason. Smiles repeated over and over, sleepless nights caring for someone, worries that taught me to be strong. Those marks are my silent biography. But along with that acceptance, I discovered the importance of not abandoning myself. Letting yourself go is not accepting life. It's giving up on it. And I want to keep feeling alive. I want to keep enjoying the experience of looking in the mirror and recognizing myself with affection. That's why the simple gesture of applying an oil every night became something much bigger. It turned into an affirmation that I still deserve care, tenderness, and attention. The great lesson I carry at 72 is that it's never too late to start again. It's never too late to decide you deserve to feel good about yourself. It doesn't matter how many years old you are. It doesn't matter if your skin isn't what it used to be. You can always take a step forward. You can always regain a little piece of confidence. You can always build well-being. And I want to leave a very clear message for everyone listening. It isn't vanity, it's self-love. Loving who we are, loving what we've lived, and at the same time giving ourselves the best we can in the present. If there's something I want to convey, it's that caring for ourselves is not fighting time, but embracing it with dignity. After this whole journey, I want to pause for a moment and look back. What began as simple curiosity, as trying a natural oil before bed, ended up becoming a transformative experience. Not because it suddenly erased my wrinkles, nor because it magically gave me back the skin of my 20s. The true transformation lay in what I recovered: confidence, hope, and the desire to look in the mirror with affection again. In these weeks and months, I learned that skin tells stories, but it also responds when we care for it with love and consistency. Every nightly application was more than a beauty gesture. It was a silent reminder that I still deserve attention and care. And although my expectations were low at first, little by little I discovered that the results go beyond the visible. More nourished skin, a more relaxed expression, and above all, renewed self-esteem. I don't want anyone to think this oil is a miracle. No such thing exists. There are no magic potions or hidden secrets that erase overnight what time has given us. But there are small actions that make an enormous difference. And for me, this oil became that daily action that brought a bit of light back. So, my invitation is not for you to rush out and buy anything. My invitation is to give yourself the chance to try, carefully and without fear, new ways of caring for yourself. Don't be fooled by impossible promises, but don't shut the door on what can add well-being to your life either. Because in the end, what matters isn't removing wrinkles. What matters is regaining confidence in yourself and feeling at peace with your reflection. So if you're hearing these words, I want to leave you with a very simple message. Take care of yourself, inside and out. Do it for your skin, your health, and your heart. Not because you want to appear fewer years old, but because you deserve to feel good today, here and now. And to finish, I'd love to get to know you a little more. Tell me in the comments how many years old you are and from which country you're listening to me. Share your experience too. Have you tried any oil or home remedy that surprised you? What routines are part of your personal care? I'm sure that together we can create a space of support and learning where each story inspires someone else. If you have suggestions for other home remedies you'd like me to try and share in future videos, leave them in the comments as well. This space isn't just mine, it's ours. Because together, by sharing what we know and what we live, we can keep finding ways to care for ourselves with dignity, respect, and self-love.